Well, when we're feeling overwhelmed in life, I think the first thing that we should do is to try to figure out why. It's interesting, when I sat down and I was thinking about this booklet that I wanted to write, I said to the Lord, I said, now God, if you want me to write this booklet, I certainly need you to tell me what to say and to help me and to lead me to the appropriate scriptures and so on. And so I said, God, I'm going to just sit here in this chair for a few minutes, and if you begin to fill my mind with thoughts, I'm going to interpret that as that this is a project you want me to embark on. And if I don't have any thoughts on this, or if I don't feel any leading of your spirit, I'm not going to just try to do it in the flesh, in my own strength, because that would just be frustrating and nothing much would come of it. So I just sat there here in my house with a pen and some paper, and God began to flood my mind with thoughts. And one of the first things I felt the Lord just put on my heart was, as we think about being overwhelmed, is that the first step in dealing with stress, you're talking about overwhelmed, that's another word for stress, but we have to begin to assess the cause. What has caused me to feel this way? Because I think many times we skip over that step, and we just say, well, it's just part of life, or it's just part of what I am, or something like that. And we don't really deal with the cause. And it's impossible to address the situation if we have not first assessed the situation. Now, here I'm sitting in my study at home, and I wish I had a dry erase board or something that you could visually see. But in your mind, you're creative enough. You can do this without the props there. But in your mind, I want you just to picture 4 circles. And in the little booklet, we're going to put this diagram in there because I think it is very, very helpful. And in the first circle, we can just write the words, the circumstances and responsibilities of life. Okay? Because that's what causes us to be stressed out and overwhelmed. The circumstances, many of them we cannot control. Many of them we can. And the responsibilities of life. Sometimes they are what they are. And sometimes we add responsibilities to our schedules that God never intended for us to add. So, circumstances and responsibilities of life, that's the first circle. The second circle is the word stress, because the circumstances and responsibilities of life lead to stress, okay? And we all know what stress feels like. Stress, in turn, leads to anxiety. Many times, I'm not saying that the only reason a person gets anxious is because they're stressed out. That's not true. There are other causes, but many times a person becomes anxious or struggling with anxiety because they're just trying to do too much too fast. They're overextended. They are overwhelmed, and it makes them feel anxious. What happens in these cases, and it's very common, if you're feeling the anxiety like this, your mind cannot slow down. Your mind is racing and trying to get everything done that needs to be done. And sometimes if you're super stressed out and you're really doing more than you should be doing, you come home at night, you sit down in your chair, even you get in bed, and you can't relax and you can't sleep. Why? Because your mind hasn't slowed down. Your mind hasn't shut off or relaxed, as it were. And so that's anxiety. It's just a mind just going 1,000,000 miles an hour. And then many times anxiety can lead to depression. The Bible even talks about that. So if a person has ongoing anxiety, it would certainly be very common for that person to deal with some depression issues. Now, many people in life are anxious and depressed, and the reason that they're anxious and depressed is because of the circumstances and responsibilities of life that have caused that stress, that have led to the anxiety and the depression. And yet the anxiety and the depression are both, either or both, are so strong that when they begin assessing their problem, they're only assessing the anxiety and the depression. And so maybe, for example, they get on an anxiety medication, or maybe they even get on a medication to deal with depression. Now, I bring this all out in the booklet, but let me be very clear here. I'm not saying that a person should never take medication for anxiety and depression. Please do not hear me saying that. First of all, I'm not a medical doctor, so it wouldn't be my place to say that. And secondly, I believe that in some cases people should be, at least in the short term, and maybe for some people in the long term, on medication for anxiety and or depression. We know that the human body is very complex. And we also know that the human mind and the human psyche is very complex. And sometimes in our bodies and even in our minds, hormones can get out of balance. Things can get out of sorts, as it were, and out of alignment. And just like a person might need medication to control high blood pressure or high cholesterol, sometimes a person needs medication to control anxiety and depression. So I'm not saying that you should never take that. All I'm saying is, first of all, if you're going to take something like that, I would meet with more than one doctor probably and get a couple of doctors' opinion on that. I would discuss it with the appropriate family member, and then I would pray about it. And then after having done those things, if I felt peaceful in my heart that I should take it, or if you feel peaceful you should take it, that would be one thing. But I would be very careful just to rush to one doctor and get a prescription without having more fully assessed the situation that you're going through in life. What I'm saying is that many times in life, we become anxious and we can even become depressed. And if we're not careful, we neglect to assess and to deal with what might be causing that anxiety and that depression. And so what we need to do is to go back to the cause. If all we do is treat the symptoms, then we'll be treating the symptoms forever. But if we can go back to the root cause, then if the cause is properly treated, then many times the symptoms would just go away. Now, if you're having anxiety and depression for some other physiological or biological reason, that would be another set of circumstances. And that's why I'm saying I always would defer to a medical doctor who is trained in that. So if you're taking medication for anxiety and or depression, I would not want you to think that you're in any way letting God down. That's not true. God understands your makeup, and God understands. He made us. He knows our frame. He understands that we're frail creatures. And so sometimes people might need to be on that. And that's fine. That's not a sin. That's just something that is just sometimes that you have to do. What I'm saying is, either in addition to doing that or before you do that, don't neglect to deal with the first circle. Remember, we have these 4 circles: circumstances, responsibilities of life, stress, anxiety, depression. One leads to the other. And so what I want you to think about today, if you're feeling overwhelmed and if you're on medication and doctor's giving you that, you keep taking that until that doctor, and unless that doctor advises you to begin to wean off of that. What I'm encouraging you today is to spend some time thinking about the circumstances in your life and the responsibilities of your life that are causing the stress, that are feeding that anxiety and that depression. And I think if we could take some time in the next several days and walk through some appropriate ways to deal with these stressors, these circumstances and responsibilities, I think it would be a very healthy thing. But for today, here's your assignment today. Just begin to think about what is it in your life that's causing you to feel stressed out. You see, if you can put your finger on those things, then when we begin to work through some ways to deal with that, it's going to be much more application oriented for you. And you can say, okay, I can apply what he's saying to this particular situation in my life. And so anyway, I think that's where we're going to be headed for the next several weeks in the devotionals that I do, is we're going to be thinking about what to do when we're all stressed out and nowhere to go, when our hearts are overwhelmed. And again, our verse is Psalm 61 and verse 2, where David said, "When my heart is overwhelmed, lead me to the rock that is higher than I." And I'm praying that the time that we'll spend together in these devotions will be a blessing to you and an encouragement to you, and something that will be very therapeutic and very healing for you. It's certainly my prayer. Have a great day.